start and look at universal credit as a general point. So generally, in order to claim universal credit as a sole trader, you have to be what we call gainfully self-employed. And the reason for that is that the government are not going to pay out benefits to someone who's not actually running a proper business and not making enough money, because otherwise you could just claim the benefit, not really do anything, and not be looking for a permanent job. So in order to not be in a position that you're looking for a permanent job, an employed job, to continue as self-employed and to get universal credit, that there is an overall rule that you must be gainfully self-employed. And what does that mean? It means that self-employment must be your main source of income. You must have regular work coming in, and you must expect to make a profit. So the business must be a commercially viable business. It must be something that can make money. And you also have to be organized and to be able to demonstrate that you have invoices, receipts, and accounts. And some of the courses that we've done already have been looking at how to keep records. And so that sort of ties into this, in that if you have got an online system and a business bank account, then you'll be in a position to provide that information should you ever have to claim universal credit. So that's the overview. We're going to look at how to claim universal credit and how you are assessed. So universal credit is normally claimed online by setting up an online account for the claim, which can be done at that website that's shown there. If you cannot claim online, you can call the helpline and do it on the phone, but they really want people to do it online. You'll have to have some evidence of your self-employment, so things like tax returns or accounts, or possibly even a business plan. And they can ask you to provide details of customers, suppliers, and other evidence such as receipts and invoices, which can be electronic, and possibly marketing materials. And that's all to back up this condition that you have to be gainfully self-employed and be making a profit. So we'll move on to how is universal credit calculated. There isn't a straight answer, and I'm not going to specifically give amounts here because it depends on your circumstances. So if you're a single person or family, you get a different amount. It all depends on your income, and it also depends on how many children you have. So a single person earning the minimum wage with 5 children will get some universal credit. A single person earning the minimum wage with no dependents will probably not get any universal credit. So it's all about them looking at what are your expenses to cover to live for your family, and what do you earn, and they compare those two figures. That's for everybody who's claiming universal credit, whether you're employed or self-employed. But for self-employed people, there's some special rules. Now, there's a special rule called the 12-month start rule, and that is something we're going to cover a few slides later. But what I'm saying here is, assuming that it's not the first 12 months of your business, you've been operating for a while, let's say that perhaps you've got more dependents, or your income has gone down, but you do still have a viable business, you may want to try and claim universal credit. So assuming this 12-month rule does not apply, then as a self-employed person, there is what they call a minimum income floor, which assumes that you earn a minimum amount from self-employment, even if you don't. And I appreciate this is quite complicated, but this is how it works. The minimum income floor is based on a 35-hour week on the minimum wage for your age. So what they say is, we assume that you will earn this 35 hours at, say it's, for example, £6 a week. If you earn less than that minimum income floor and you're not in the first 12 months, they will assume that that's your earnings, and your universal credit payment will be based as if you had received that money. The reality of that is that unless you've got some dependents, you probably won't get any universal credit. if you earn more than the minimum income floor, then your actual earnings are taken. If you earn less, then it defaults to this minimum income floor.
Do you have a chance to translate it right now?
Да, будь ласка.
Can I translate briefly?
Yeah. Do you want to
yeah.
go? What do you want to do? Go back to the slides, or?
Yeah, that's fine if you want to translate.
Так, дивіться, я коротко розкажу, тому що ця інформація, якби я сама її толком ще не можу зрозуміти. Значить так, і якщо ви на Universal Credit, це є нова система, яку вони спочатку, вона не працювала багато років до того, вони тільки недавно її розпочали випробовувати на британцях і ще не всіх перевели на цю систему. Значить, можна подаватися на Universal Credit, якщо є 12 місяців приватного підприємця, так? Приємно, не знаю, як це відноситься до українців в даний момент. Якщо немає тих 12 місяців, воно все рівно вони будуть рахували, як ніби є 12 місяців, і брати за межу як 35 годин мінімального, мінімальної роботи. І вони, підрахують, скільки то можна, в принципі, приблизно заробляти, якщо ти, можливо, і нема цього прибутку, але вони все рівно будуть підраховувати по тій мінімальній межі. Щоб показати, що ти маєш приватне підприємство, потрібно мати, звичайно, рахунки від поставщиків чи рахунки виставлені клієнтам, угоди, переписки, те, що підтверджує те, що у вас є власний бізнес. Також це все залежить від того, чи є діти, чи нема дітей. Якщо є діти, Universal Credit буде виплачуватися. Якщо немає дітей, скоріше всього, можуть і не прийняти. Це відноситься до тих людей, я так зрозуміла, відноситься до тих людей, які мають приватний бізнес і хочуть податися на Universal Credit.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tony, may I clarify one question? People who are self-employed, can they apply for Universal Credit only after 12 months?
Суботнього ринку.
No, there's different rules. So if you're in the first 12 months of your business, then, and I'll cover this a little bit later in about 3 slides on, if you're in the first 12 months of your business, then you can ask them to not have this minimum floor applying. But if you've already been trading for more than 12 months, then the minimum income floor applies.
Okay, thank you.
Тобто, якщо немає ще 12 місяців приватного підприємства, значить 35 оцих годин вони не будуть враховувати у вашому випадку. Якщо є 12 місяців, вони будуть враховувати 35 годин за тиждень.
Вибачте, а можна я трошки внесу корективи?
Так.
Так? Просто я пройшла вже цей шлях, коли приїхала сюди, то подавалася як self-employed і подавалася на Universal Credit. І як мені пояснив мій коуч, що є 2 шляхи. Тобто ти можеш обрати перший шлях, ти обираєш стартовий період протягом 12 місяців, так? І тобі виплачують Universal Credit в повному обсязі. Або інший шлях, вони уявляють, наче ти працюєш вже в цій сфері і отримуєш оцей minimum income floor, і вони його, вони уявляють, наче ти заробляєш цей мінімум і виплачують тобі Universal Credit, враховуючи це як твій заробіток. Оце такі 2 шляхи є. Тобто, або ти обираєш стартовий період протягом 12 місяців, і вони дивляться, як працює твій бізнес, так і повністю виплачують тобі Universal Credit в повному обсязі, який тобі повинні виплачувати, в залежності від того, чи є в тебе діти, чи якісь інші, можливо, стан, фізичний стан там, чи ще якісь особливості. Або в інший шлях, це ти кажеш, що наприклад, я була вчителем, да? І вони кажуть, ми уявимо, що ви працюєте тут вчителем, вчителем, заробляєте мінімум income floor, і ми будемо від нього вже відраховувати вам Universal Credit. Тобто це вже людина сама вибирає, який шлях. Зрозуміло?
Okay, should we move on to the next slide?
Є якісь питання? Тобто не 12 місяців ти повинен бути підприємцем тут, а ти повинен погодитися на 12-місячний стартовий період.
Я вибачаюсь, я правильно зрозуміла, що перед тим, як почати працювати, треба оформити спочатку підприємця, так? Чи ні?
Якщо ваші заробітки вже сягнули 1000 фунтів.
Тобто я зараз вийду на роботу і буду працювати уборщицею, так? То мені треба вже оформлятися, так?
До
Якщо ви
1000
заробили-
фунтів ні.
Так, якщо ви заробили 1000 фунтів за податковий рік, то ви повинні відкрити підприємство. Якщо менше 1000 фунтів, то не повинні.
Зрозуміло.
Okay.
Який період відкривати до, ну, яка межа, який період треба, щоб відкрити його? От я вперше почула, що треба відкрити підприємство.
Yeah, I think I'm going to move on if that's okay, and then we can come back and translate some more if that's okay.
Okay,
So-
sorry. Yeah.
That's all right. How much I've done a slide. The next slide is how much will I get? And I said before, I've just given you a range there. So the standard allowance per month for single people under 25 starts at £292 per month, and goes, that's under 25 or 368 over 25. And you get more if you live as a couple or if you have children. So as you can see, that if you're single and you've got you're self-employed and the minimum income floor applies, then you're probably not actually going to get anything unless you've got other reasons, other allowances. So the more you earn, then your universal credit payment gets reduced. If you have losses from your self-employment, but bear in mind that you have to show that the self-employment is profitable overall, but you may have losses in a particular month, then these can be carried forward to future months, provided you can prove the business is overall commercially viable. So in 1 month, you may have a loss. The minimum income floor will apply, the loss gets carried forward, and will reduce your income in another month. So that's with the losses. And similarly, if you have surplus earnings, and if your earnings, they've defined this as being over 2,500 a month, then they'll carry forward the excess and set that off against your, it'll basically reduce your future payments. So if you earn over a certain amount, it will reduce the payments that you get. It is quite complicated to work it out. So we're going to move on to how do I report earnings? So you have to report the earnings every month. So to tell them, because they don't know how much you earn from self-employed until you do your tax return 9 months later. And because this has to be in real time, you have to do a monthly report. And you have to report it via your online universal credit account. You have to show your income and expenses, and they send you a text or email reminder to do it. Coming back to some of our earlier presentations, if you're using an online accounting system, then you're going to already have these figures ready to put in. So it's really useful to be using an online system. The figures are based on money in and money out, so cash, as we call it. You don't have to include any amounts owed to or from the business, and you can use the same method for your self-employed tax return. I'm now going to go on and cover this 12-month rule that I talked about before. So if you have started a new business in the last 12 months, then the minimum income floor will not apply, provided you can show you are gainfully self-employed. And in this case, your income will be your actual profit, your income less your costs, even if it is below the minimum income floor. And this can apply for up to 12 months. You will have to make quarterly appointments with your coach to show that you are actually, show what steps you're taking to build up your business. And you can only have one startup period, unless 5 years have passed and you've started a different business. So those are the conditions around this 12-month rule. I'm going to go to some other points. So just some other points that came up while I was researching some of this. So if you are, and this is something we've covered before, if you're self-employed and employed, which is possible, then you still need to report your self-employed income via the online universal credit account, and they will also have access to your employment from the employer's submissions, and your universal credit will be based on both sources of income added together. Just a little point, not something I've really covered in this report, but if you run your own business via a limited company, then rather strangely, they still deem you as being self-employed, even though for tax reasons you're not self-employed. And you have to report the income and expenses of the company. And you then include your salary as an expense of the company, which it is. And you are then self-employed and employed. So you have your employment as director and you have your deemed self-employment through the limited company. And they will take both together to work out your universal credit payment. If you claim tax credits, now that was from the old system prior to universal credit being introduced, as soon as you submit a universal credit claim, the tax credits are cancelled and then they're finished, and they then assess you for universal credit, which you may or may not be eligible for, but it completely cancels the tax credit claim. So they do sometimes advise people who are receiving tax credits to be careful before they submit a universal credit claim, because they might end up being worse off. Okay, so we're now going to talk about credits towards pension and other state benefits, because in order to receive universal credit or any other state benefit, whether it's a pension, a maternity allowance, you have to have what we call credits. You have to have been paying into national insurance somehow or other. So in order to get credits to your state pension and other state benefits, and I've said such as universal credit or maternity allowance, you need to be paying national insurance either through your employment or as a self-employed person. As a self-employed person, you would be paying Class 2 national insurance via your self-assessment, and that is currently paid at a rate of £3.45 per week. And it's paid when you do your tax return after this tax year. If your earnings are below the lower profits threshold, which is 12,570, but above the small profits threshold, which is 6,725, then you don't actually have to pay the Class 2 anymore. Until April now, just gone, you did, but they've changed it. So if you're in that bracket, your profits are in that bracket between those two figures, you will still get credit for Class 2, but you don't pay them. But quite strangely, if your earnings are below the small profits threshold of 6,725, then you won't get any credits. The only way you can get the credits is to actually voluntarily pay the Class 2. So again, a bit complicated, but there may be some situations where it is worth paying the Class 2 voluntarily. So I'm now going to go on and talk about one specific benefit, which is maternity allowance. If you have a baby as a self-employed person, you can claim maternity allowance for up to 39 weeks. The claim can be made, there's actually submitting the claim online. You can make it when you're 26 weeks pregnant, and the payments can start from 11 weeks prior to your due date. You can choose when they start, so that's the earliest that they can start, and they can run for up to 39 weeks while you're not working. There are some conditions attached to maternity allowance. You must have been registered as self-employed, and this is specifically registered for at least 26 weeks in the 66 weeks before your due date. And the second part is a little bit changed now with the new rules on Class 2, but it says, and you must have paid Class 2 if they were due for at least 13 weeks out of the 66 weeks before your due date. So basically you must have been paying Class 2 or be eligible to have the credit for it. Okay, I'll just go through. So maternity, it's slide 11, maternity allowance. If you have full state benefit, then the maternity allowance, the maximum that can be paid is £172.48 per week. if you have no credits, the minimum is £30 per week. And if you have some credit, it's between those figures. So if, for example, you do unpaid work, you may still be entitled to the £30 a week. If you're claiming universal credit and maternity allowance, your universal credit claim will be reduced for any maternity allowance that you receive. And as maternity allowance is usually higher than universal credit, this will generally mean you get no universal credit, but it depends on your circumstances. And slide 12, conclusion, just to sum up that it's very important, as you've seen, to claim any of these benefits, that if you're self-employed, you need to be organized, you need to have good records of your income and expenses, and ideally you should be using a separate bank account and an online system so that you have the figures that you need for the claim to hand. You should also make sure your tax returns are up to date and that any national insurance is paid on time. And that way, if you do need to claim for universal credit or maternity allowance, you've got full entitlement and you'll have the necessary figures for the reporting that needs to be done.